Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode podcast. Now get shit done and smash that subscribe button now. All right, what is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with my good friend Ben Barber, and we are back with round number 6, part number 6 in this series of how to have massive success with REOs and short sales for real estate agents. And through this series, man, hopefully you guys have checked out episodes 1 through 5 so far. The first part, the first several videos of this series were very high level. You know, why it's important to get into REO and short sales, or why Ben and I truly feel it's important in order to be able to recession-proof your business. Plus, these are just consistent legs of your business. You know, one thing that has been massive for me over almost my 16-long-year career now, and allowed me to always be one of the top realtors and team leaders on the planet, regardless of market shifts and so forth, is, man, I've got strong strategies for my traditional business, right? And I make sure to stay in touch, even if like during the Great Recession, when a lot of them weren't buying and selling during that time, I'm still keeping in touch, keeping those relationships alive, and boom, I've got that part of the business. Then I've got my relationships with my hedge funds, my relationships with my investors, my relationships with my REO accounts, right? And then short sales. So I have these multiple legs of business. Because at any given time, depending on what's going on in the market place, one of those can be stronger than the other. Yeah, right. So it allows you to continue. Just because the market shifts or going through a recession or whatever doesn't mean that your business shouldn't still be thriving. And this allows you to protect your business. But even when the market is as hot as it is right now in 2021, as us creating this video, right, there's still a consistent amount of foreclosure and short sale business, because those, you know, a lot of people have the philosophy of, or the mindset of, oh, those only, really exist in market crashes. And yes, they are at a higher level during those times. But you got to remember, man, this is about hardships, people experiencing hardships that put them in these situations. And people are, the market can be great, economy can be great, and somebody can still go through a hardship, right? But we go through the importance of it, how to get into REO and short sales, the main processes and steps, right? And then as we further prolong and further along go down this series, we're getting more granular. So last week and part 5, we talked about the occupancy check, right? When you get an REO property, doing the initial occupancy check, if it's vacant, great. But then if it's occupied, what to do there, top tips for cash for keys and so forth. Now, today we're picking up on that. Boom. Now the property's vacant, whether you did the initial occupancy check, it's vacant, and or the cash for keys was successful. You got the occupant out. Now the property's vacant. What's next? Which is really the what's referred to as the property preservation process. This is the things that need to happen to get the property ready to list on the marketplace, right? So we're going to go deep into that, and always joined in this series, my good friend Ben Barber, who, was in the asset manager side of this space for a long time, was one of the top senior asset managers for the biggest banks, biggest institutions in the REO foreclosure space, create a lot of the systems that Freddie Mac and a lot of the biggest institutions still use today. And he has as much experience as anybody I've ever met or known from the bank side, from the asset management side. And then, of course, my experience comes from being an agent on this stuff. So with that being said, Ben, let's jump on in, man, and just have you share, what this looks like when it comes to, now that the property's vacant, like what are the next steps? What are your most important tips, suggestions, and so forth, to ensure that property is then, the best that it can be to get it ready for list.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me. It's fun getting on here, giving everybody as much information as we can and much knowledge, kind of make a better workforce out there. So with Prop Pres, this is one of the biggest headaches within the REO space from an agent side, asset manager side, and outsourcer perspective, because you're looking for a lot of things to happen and be coordinated very quickly. And, what I like about this program, Josh, is that we actually get to give people the non-political responses, right? Like we don't have to we don't have to fluff anything here. And we can tell you, like, I know one of the biggest challenges I took over the VA account. We assigned 5,000 assets out to a prop pres company that nobody had vetted, and they had 4 people internally with no vendors set up, so it was a scramble. So keep that in mind, that the agent, if you want to increase your success, if you want to move that asset faster, and if you want to keep getting those assignments from the asset manager, then prop pres is where you can really step up and deliver incredible results, because it is a pain point. So the very first thing we're going to do is I would suggest you start thinking ahead every time you go out there, right? Like, we don't want to just go do an occupancy inspection and then have to come back and then do our initial photos and then confirm rekey and all that. Like, we want to bang out as many things as we can. So we talked about occupancy inspection last week. Well, we want to be ready to go, that if that property is vacant, we want to be ready to rekey it. We want to be ready to get that mechanical lockbox on there, set it to the outsourcer's code, take our interior photos, and start determining the next steps for our valuation. Like, you want to take care of as many things as you can while you're there, instead of keep going back out there, so that our tasks are done on time. But I think the number one thing I would do with the inspection, with the initial services, is once you note that property is occupied, it's going to be assigned by the outsourcer to their prop pres company, their property preservation company. In some cases, they may ask you to coordinate with your contractors, but that has really gone away. And everything is typically handled by a national vendor that's then outsourcing things to local contractors. In the summertime, they're going to go out, they're going to do their initial grass cut, they're going to rekey the property, they're going to do a winterization in the winter, things like that. So number one, understand the responsibilities of the prop pres company that's assigned from your outsourcer, so you know what they're responsible for. And then that way you can monitor that and give feedback to the outsourcers on what's being done, what's not being done. But I think that the number one thing you have to do right away is you have to secure the property, right? So the rekey typically is included with the initial services, but we also see major delays getting the property rekeyed. For me, I know that in my own business, I take that as a business expense. I have my contractor ready to go. I have no problem completing the rekey, getting the code box set up right away so that I can clear that task immediately. If I can get reimbursed for that, like if it's an a la carte service, fantastic. If not, I'm going to take that hit as part of my expenses, because I need the property secured right away. We don't want to run into a he said, she said, if something happens to the property from the time that you report it vacant to the time that the rekey is done by the property preservation company. So I think that's the most important thing, is make sure the rekey gets taken care of right away. And then while you're doing that rekey, you want to have make copies of the keys. Like, you would be amazed at how many times vendors go out and just keep the key with them, because you're in a mechanical box. So, it's not like a Supra where you have access to who's access that box. And we run into that all the time with missing keys. And you don't want to have somebody like me who goes out and does field inspections for the banks come out and not be able to access the property because there's no key. And now we've got to get it rekeyed again because you didn't make copies. So I think that's number one, is securing the property and making sure that, the property is safe and secure and that you have access to it. And then the next thing is just starting to prepare, right? Like it's a vacant property now. So it's walking in, understanding. I know we're going to talk about valuations on the next one, but I think this is where you start. It's walking through the property and noting things that it needs, like the condition of the carpet and paint. Is there a foul smell? Is there anything that's an unsafe, like maybe something's hazardous and needs to be taken care of right away? Like I would say, you may walk into a property in Florida in the summertime that has mold growing, right? Or I guess in REO, we never say mold. We have, discoloration. Side note, don't ever say anything is mold. It's always discoloration. But I would say you look at anything that can damage the property right away, and you get the attention of the asset manager, the outsourcer on it.
Yep.
Is there anything you want to add to that? Because I think that's the first thing, is like, we just want to, we want to preserve the asset. That's the first step. And that's where that rekey comes in. And that's where that determining if there's any code violations, safety violations, something threatening the property, like discoloration or something like that. Like, we're preserving the property right away.
Yep. And it's been said, do never use the word mold.
Never.
That is like the quickest way to get a negative mark, right? With the banks and asset management companies, is that because number one, the reality is you and me, like as agents, are like, we're not mold experts. We don't necessarily know. Plus that cues off, puts so much liability on them. Now, it doesn't mean that they're trying to sell an unhealthy property or be deceiving to the general public. Right. Right. If we see discoloration, we can bring in experts, let the expert figure that out. And if it indeed is, mold that needs an extensive remediation. I've had banks where we've had to rip apart the whole entire kitchen, right? Rip out the walls, freaking treat it, get a 5-year, mold warranty, put everything back in. It's not that they're trying to get away with shady shit, right? But at the end of the day, you don't know if it's mold or not. And if you state that it's mold when it's not mold or doesn't need extensive remediation, it's something that, because there's specifications in that world where, if it's below a certain size or below a certain kind of area, that could just be cut out, right, replaced in whatever, where it doesn't need, full surgery, if you will. So, but that word can make it's just have awareness of that.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got some things just for my stance of this. And again, you guys, Ben comes from the cool thing about I love, my relationship with Ben and knowing Ben is with his extensive experience on the asset management side, he's able to share like what that world was like, their pain points and so forth. Because it's like, look, at the end of the day, our job for any of our clients, I don't care if it's an investor, traditional buyer, seller, or an asset manager for foreclosure. Like our job is to not just help them accomplish the goals that they have for their real estate needs and goals, but to also make it a great experience and make their life easy and make it as hassle-free as possible, right? So Ben is able to share a lot of that knowledge that a lot of asset managers will never be able to share with you. Like there's things that they are not allowed to physically say, or it's like the other day I go to my bank, I'm setting up a new business account and I'm talking to my business banker there. And, she takes care of setting up, all my new, I've got about a dozen different, LLCs and business accounts through her at my bank. And she's like, hey, I realized your last bank, your last account, you never used your credit card or debit card, or like didn't utilize them in this window. And I'm like, no, I got them just in case, but it was really a pass-through company, right? Just for money to pass through. It's kind of like a holding company, if you will. But then she said, look, she goes, I'm not supposed to tell you this. The bank will get me in trouble if I say this, but I don't get my full bonus unless those are used within 90 days. So even if you just go get gas or like go buy a $2 thing, like, well, I didn't know that, right? So I didn't like that. That'd be something easy for me to do. She takes such great care of me. I want to make sure she gets compensated and paid, but to the bank, she's not allowed to necessarily tell me that. So there's a lot they can't tell you where Ben's able to give you guys those insights. So just to, go through a few things on mine and then we'll let Ben finish this up is, all right. So number one, rekey. Has been talked about securing the property. So some tips there. Now, some banks might have it where they have their own locksmith. Over the years, I've represented, 35 some banks and outsource companies, which is all the same thing. It just means the banks aren't doing it in-house. That's what it means outsource. But I've always been able to use my own locksmith, right? They've given me, an X amount of approved dollar amount that I'm allowed to pay that locksmith, whatever that looks like. And we just got to be in that threshold, but that way I can operate from a place of speed, right? But here's the thing, you guys, is this is a little bit more advanced, but once you have people that you can trust, like my locksmith, I brought him in also on my payroll. So he'd get paid is for his locksmith business and get reimbursed from the banks. Well, I would pay him, the bank would reimburse me. But I also put him on payroll. So I trained him to do the occupancy checks for me and have those initial cash for, have the initial conversations, post the notices and so forth, right? Where then, like if somebody was occupying the property, this goes back to our last episode in the series, right? He would hand them the notices and take all the pictures and whatever, and then give them instructions, but collect their information. So then I could reach out to them. We could set up a meeting and talk about next steps. If it was vacant, he would then go in, rekey it, secure it, and then do all of the, the initial inspections, photos, like all the things that I needed. Now, of course, I had to spend a lot of time with them, just like if you're hiring a transaction coordinator in your business, you got to spend months with them, making sure they know your processes, know your systems, know everything inside and out so they can execute exactly how you would execute on those same things. And then you got to set up systems to inspect what you expect and so forth, right? But then I put him on my payroll so I could get those extra things done and kind of leverage that in such a way. But it was a win-win, right? A massive win-win. He was able to make a lot of extra money. He enjoyed it, saved me a lot of time. And it was a win for everybody. So, okay, we got the rekey. Once the property's rekeyed, as Ben said, in your inspection, your initial photos, and this is really important. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because we're gonna elaborate on this and the next part of this series that we'll release next week, or if you're binging these after the fact, it'll be the next one after this, where we talk about your valuation, your BPO, which is also your recommendation for, it's not just the valuation of the property, but it's also your professional recommendation on, hey, should this property be sold as is? What should we repair? Right? But when you're doing that inspection and repairs, guys, be extremely detailed. I know these are things that we kind of hit on in previous series, our videos or episodes. You might be listening to this, not watching this, so I shouldn't say just videos. But you got an asset manager that in some cases is 2,000-3,000 miles away from your location, doesn't live where you live, has never been to your area, has never been in real estate, has never sold real estate personally as a realtor, right? And our photos need to be detailed. Ben gave a great tip of like put a reference point. If there's a hole in the wall, right, we'll have your hand in a pen next to that hole so you can see a reference point, or measure it, right? Put a measuring tape next to it so they can see it. Being extremely detailed, because you need to articulate a story through a freaking written report and through photos, right? So you're not able to walk through it one-on-one with them, or even a FaceTime video. Like, that shit's not happening, right? So, make sure that you nail those. And again, we're going to go really in depth on that in the next one. Then from there, and we're talking about once everything's out of eviction status. So if there is, once it's vacant, or it appears to be vacant, deemed vacant, if there's over most banks that I've worked with, and again, this is all stuff that they'll communicate to you, but if there's over like $500 worth of personal property that's in the property, they might have to do a personal property eviction. Even though nobody's living in the property, right? They have to then do an eviction just on the bullshit that's left in the property, right? So then you need to then understand and know, well, hey, how do I value this couch? Right? How much is it? How much is a used couch worth? How much is a used desk worth? How much is this used furniture worth? Yep. Right? And that's gonna, I had to spend a lot of time going on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and seeing that garage, looking at what that used stuff is worth, and kind of create a chart that gave me an idea. So then also I could communicate that. So when I go to my asset manager and be like, hey, I believe there's over $500 worth of personal property left in here. Here are pictures of what's left in. But then I would also provide, here's the research that I did of what, couches like this are going for on Craigslist, what a desk like this is going for, right? So then they could make their decisions. Because the mistake I made initially is I was like, yeah, this is, in my opinion, this is above 500. Well, they're looking at it in their opinion. They're like, well, dude, that maybe it's only worth 400, right? We're good to go. Right. But I didn't give them detailed enough information for them to make their decision, right. Okay. So once the property's trashed out, right, the property preservation company is going to come in there, as Ben mentioned, landscape it, clean it, and send them to their cleaners, trash out companies, and get all of that initial stuff done. You need to get the utilities turned on. In most cases, they're going to be on in your name. So water, power, electricity, so forth. You probably hopefully have done this already before this part, as we talked about in previous series, but, making sure that you're communicating with the HOA, seeing if there's past due HOAs, yep. Right. And working to negotiate those or get those waived. And then from there, see if there's other additional services that need to be done on the property that are outside of what the property preservation companies do. Because the banks are going to hire a company like Field Asset Services. FAS is a big one, right? Well, they'll come in, they'll do the trash out, they'll do clean, they'll do the initial landscape, and then they'll do updated cleans as needed. They will do maintenance landscape. So, I mean, they'll have a list of little things that they do, but there might be things like if there's a pool, right? Like they might not provide pool cleaning. You might need to bring in your own pool company and make sure, which that pool's green. Like Phoenix, there's a ton of pools, right? So we can never have a green pool, right? It becomes a huge code violation. Obviously, pools are a huge selling point. So out here, so think if there's any special outside services that you need to go and handle and take care of. And again, you guys, you're notifying your asset manager on this. In most cases with this stuff, like pool service, just as an example, I always got reimbursed on that stuff. I would just have to communicate it and get approval through my asset manager. And when I say get approval, I would take care of it. And then I would get approval, right? But we had a relationship where they trust me and they would give me approval. But even if they were like, oh, look, that's something I can't approve, it was okay. I was willing to front that money. So make sure you have that. Last thing I'll say here is make sure that you guys are going above and beyond, right? When it comes to the property, everything that we talked about here, look, property preservation companies only do so much, and it's a volume game for them. I remember talking with I became friends at one point with one of the managers through Field Asset Services, and dude, they're getting paid flat, low fees per thing. I mean, it's kind of like going to I don't know, great clips or supercuts versus a higher end, but like you can't, sometimes you get what you get. It's not always perfect, and I'm not dogging on them. It's just, look, they with what they get compensated and the volume that they have to handle, it's just not always going to be perfect. Yep. So what I mean by going above and beyond, man, like I'm not like, oh, well, the property pres company did a shitty job with this landscape, and then there's still weeds everywhere, and then I'm annoying my asset manager. No, dude, I'm just going to take care of the freaking weeds. Right? Not that I won't report that to the asset manager, just so they're aware of it, right? Mm-hmm. So they have it, but that would be like, hey, here's a picture, the after picture after the property pres company did the initial landscape. So you can see there was a lot of weed, whatever. I took care of them, like, so it's all done. The property looks great now. Here's the after pics of what I did afterwards. I just wanted you to have this on your record just in case if you guys are doing, I don't know, evaluation period with your property pres company, but again, I want to make my asset manager's life easier, not put more headaches on their plate. And the last thing with all of these tasks, you cannot control the property preservation companies going out there and doing this stuff, and their timelines and so forth. But be as aggressive as you can managing it, develop great relationships with it. You guys, you're all in this together. Right. Yeah. So if a property preservation company is not doing a good job, man, I'm not going to call them up and be a dick. I'm going to try to develop rapport, develop a connection, get them on my side, become friends where they want to go above and beyond with me. If I need a favor, they're going to do it urgently because we have a great working relationship that serves everybody in this. But the things that you can control, be brilliant at, man. And we talked about this earlier in earlier episodes, but whatever the task that the asset manager gives me in the system, my goal is always to cut that in half if I'm able to, right. Or sooner, right. But whatever they tell me, boom, like if they give me 24 hours to that rekey, man, I want to have it done and hopefully 8 or what, right. Like just cut this, like again, get this stuff knocked out, give yourself enough time where you're not shortcutting, like have it high quality, detailed, but just, high level sense of urgency. Because again, not only then are you going to get the property to market sooner, get it sold faster, which everybody wins. You get paid quicker, right? Everybody wins. That's going to, but if you do that, what I can promise you is you're going to become their go-to person, right? Like, because nobody else is doing this kind of stuff. There's maybe 1 to 5% of all REO agents that take it this seriously and go above and beyond, just like all aspects of this industry. And they want to feed you as much business as they can because they can rely on you, get shit done, and you help them accomplish goals. So it just starts snowball and snowball. I mean, when I first with Fannie Mae Direct as an example, start off with getting one asset, one listing, here and there. Let's just say one a week or every other week, right? But within, it was only about 3 or 4 months to me to build up with it. Now they're overloading me with about 90 properties a month. Yep. Which created a whole new set of problems for me that, which we'll about in a future series about how to leverage stuff and grow and scale your teams and to be able to handle this volume. But dude, they take care of you if you take care of them. It's right. A very reciprocal relationship. So those are kind of the main things that I have. I don't know if you have any kind of ending last points or tips on any of that stuff, Ben?
No, I love that you hit the reference point in the photos again, because I think that's a big one. Also, I would just say while you're taking the pictures, again, to harp on what you said, it's somebody who's not in your market. We're studying thousands of photos probably every day. So when you're taking pictures, vary the picture so you can differentiate the rooms. Like if I'm taking a picture of 3 bedrooms, it's not always that same angle. It's a different angle. So that as an asset manager or repair specialist or anybody's looking through it, we can quickly look and say, that's bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, all the way down, right? So make sure that you're doing that. So the reference size is fantastic, or the reference point, but then varying those pictures. And then I did just want to say on that, know their bid process, so that if you have to get something bid out right away, you know that if it hits this dollar threshold, you may only need one person. Like you'd said, Josh, it may be low enough that you can just go take care of it and submit for reimbursement, or you may have to get 1 bid to get approval, or you may have to get 2 bids, 3 based on the dollar amount. But then that very last thing is understand your property, your personal property stuff, because like you'd said, it's a weird game with that valuation, but the number one drawback I saw from people is they would take a picture of a file cabinet, but we didn't know what was in it. So we had to send them back out to take a picture inside the file cabinet. So I'm not saying go through and take a picture of every single document, but you want to open drawers. There should be nothing closed. And if you see anything that is personal at all, if you see a birth certificate, a bank statement, a business statement, something like that, that now negates the dollar amount completely. It is now personal property. So just protect yourself. Err on the side of caution, because we don't want to go through a suit. And then understand the property or the personal property guidelines, because some of that stuff you can just put into a room, lock it. You can move it to a storage unit, lock it, do your post and store. And some you can just get approval from the asset manager and then trash out. So I know it's a lot to take in, but once you guys master this stuff, we go deeper in the program, but once you master this stuff, you'll see that it's going to save you time and money and headaches and a lot of redundancy. And like you said, Josh, you're going to get rewarded, because I knew who my agents were in every single state, that if I called them right now, I know that my problems would be taken care of immediately. And just so you guys know how important this is, I was talking to my friend Charlie, who is, he was an operations manager with me at VRM. He's now taken over their property preservation department. And so now we're looking at 8 years later, and he is still having a problem with property preservation and these things that you and I have just talked about. And it's funny to me that that's still the reiteration almost a decade after we set up that property preservation process for VRM, that they're still experiencing headaches, because it's just, it's mastering the small things. So anyway, I think we hit it there, but I think that's what you have to do. Everything that we've talked about here will separate all of the agents who listen and execute on it. It will separate them from 95% of everybody else that's out there doing the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. And when you guys are like, well, how do I know what the property preservation, kind of all of the internal policies of the asset managers and so forth? Look, each bank that you work with, now most of them are pretty uniform. They kind of, for the most part, follow the same processes, right? But don't assume that. But when you get in with any bank, like whoever your client is in that world, they're going to give you an operations manual. But just a forewarning, man, sometimes those things are like encyclopedia thick, right? Not always, but sometimes. But it spells it out all in there. So then right, what those are. So then you can create, let's just say, a Google Drive folder or and inside there have Google Sheets and documents where you can quickly reference and see what those stipulations are, what they know they are. Look, if you're working with one bank and you get to the point where you're doing enough volume, it's easy just to master and know all of theirs. But when you get to the point where you have dozens of bank clients, it can be hard to commit it to memory. Well, I don't need it to, because I can just pull up my Google Drive app on my phone, bam, look at it, even when I'm at the property, understand it, know it. And then just to reiterate this again, you guys, because of the importance of this, I know this is repetitive here. We're kind of beating this to death, but we're doing that for a reason, because of the high importance of remember that your asset manager is somebody that's not in your market. Even if they're in your market, it doesn't matter, right? They're in a cubicle on a computer screen, viewing this stuff virtually. Right. They in most cases, they're not successful real estate agents that pivoted to this. They're not like, savvy real estate investors in most, whatever that may be, right. So just assume, okay, that I'm delivering to somebody that has no knowledge of my local real estate market. And so how do I paint a picture and a story in such a way that makes sense to them and for them to quickly make the right decision or make their what they feel is their right decision? As an example, it's like when I have my assistant or any of my assistants go out there and like, well, if we're booking an event that we're hosting, a mastermind we're hosting, or even my own personal vacations, right? Like I'll communicate to my assistant, okay, here's what we want, here's what we want, here's what we need, right? Like I'll map all that out. So then she then has everything that she needs to go out there and clarity of what my goal is and what we want. So she can go out there and do all the research, right? So it saves me time of doing that research. But then like the research is important, but the most critical part of all of this is she needs to deliver it to me, or he or she needs to deliver it to me in a way where I can quickly see it, quickly review it, and within 4 or 5 minutes make a decision. Right. She might, he or she might spend the 3, 4, 5 hours, 10 hours doing all the research, right? But it's like, boom, I've been doing this with my podcast manager with our guests, right? Like he on a Trello board, he goes through, okay, well, here's who the guest is. Here's how I found them, the research I did, here are the 5 reasons that I think that they will be a great fit for the podcast. Here's resources, other podcasts, other videos that they've been on. Here's all their websites. Here is their bio, right? So then very quickly, all I got to do is go onto that Trello board. Everything's there for me to know, okay, it's a yes, or is this a no for a guest for the podcast? And if it's a yes, boom, I give it a green label. If it's a no, I give it a red label, and he knows into whether to book them or not. So he'll go out there and do all that research, collect it all for me. It allows me to make a decision within 5 minutes, right? So that becomes really important. So, with all that being said, you guys, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you checking these out. We got more of these coming. So make sure if you haven't watched series episodes 1 through 5, I believe that this is part 6. Make sure to watch those because each of these builds off of each other. Like what we're talking about today won't necessarily make any freaking sense if you didn't watch those other ones. And that holds true for all the future ones. We're kind of doing this like a Lego set, they're like instruction 1, instruction 2, each one builds off the next. Yep. And we're doing this, you guys, to make sure that you have the information, the education, the knowledge that you need to go out there and have success in this. Now, if you are looking for more advanced training on this, Ben and I have created an amazing program, hands down by far the most in-depth program, if you will, that exists out there on REOs and short sales, yep. Right? So it's called REO University, where we walk you through step-by-step all of these things in detail, but then showing you live. So like next week when we're talking about the BPO, all right, well in there, like we're doing several BPOs with you, walking you through them. We're actually doing live property inspections and yep. trash outs and, walking you through everything from A to Z of what you need to know to go out there and have success. Because one of the hardest things for the agents in this world is these banks have no training. Right? Like you're going to have to figure this shit out. Now, again, I mean, we're creating this series in this video to give you all the important things that you need. But then there's going to be, things that supporting things that, you need to master, which you can learn to go out there and master those on your own. But these point out the main processes, the main steps. So then you know what to go out there and master and what you're going to need to master. But if you're looking just to eliminate the guesswork, eliminate the research, have that, have that training that you can also really utilize as your reference manual, as you're growing these parts of your business. Again, we have our own program called REO University. We're gonna have a link below. We also have a promo code for that to save you guys $500 so you can get it super cheap. So all that's below. So you can learn more about it, see what's included. And if you want to do it, if it thinks that you think it's for you, there's that promo code where you can save $500. So, as always, we truly appreciate you guys being here. Truly appreciate your support. Truly appreciate you watching. Make sure to share this with anybody that you feel can benefit from this information in this series. And then Ben, as always, man, truly appreciate you taking time to be here with us, dude.
Yeah. Good to see you, my friend. Good info.
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys. See you next time. Peace.
You guys.
I hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.